So to start, I'm going to do the skin prep and do all the primers and things like that. So I like to have a primer to even out some pores and to just help makeup stick to my face. It's going to be different for everyone because everyone's skin's different. I'd say one universal thing, I suppose, is using a setting spray or fixing spray type thing before and after makeup application. It will really help makeup stick to the face, and that is especially useful if you're going to be at an event or somewhere where you really need the makeup to last. Yeah, I'm just gonna go in with a sticky primer and perimeter. I'm going to focus on areas of the face that may tend to lean a bit more oily, and I may have a more likely chance of makeup dissolving and wanting to come off. I'm going to start off with some colour correction. So I'm going to take a apricot-y, peachy, dark peach, orangey sort of colour, and I'm just going to put it on the back of my hands just so that it warm up a bit like that. And then I'm just going to get a brush and apply it around my mouth. So I'm just going to put a bit on a fluffy brush and then just place it around the mouth. You could also put it underneath eyes if you want to do any correction for dark circles, but I actually like keeping my natural sort of colouring of my under eyes. And of course, if you have a lighter skin tone, you can use a lighter shade of orange. And if you have a darker skin tone, you can use a darker shade of orange, or even go into using a sort of red colour. To place a bit on the forehead as well. And this should prevent any areas of the face looking a bit ashy. Now it's foundation time. So the foundation I have has more of a glowy finish, and of course when it comes to the 90s and all that kind of thing, matte sort of reigns. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to still use this finish, but I'm going to powder it within every inch of its life. But for now, we're going to get a sort of flat topped, domed. I'm really bad at describing brushes, which is this shape. What we're going to do is we're going to cover it with the foundation. I'm just going to apply it to the skin. I like to start off with these painterly sort of motions, but what we also will do later is do a tapping motion, as we don't want any brush marks on our face. Just going to double check in the mirror and make sure it's all blended. There we go. So even though it's quite a glowy finish, it's not too bad, and you can always powder it after as well. And of course you could always do something like using a mattifying primer. Now I personally like to avoid them. They're normally silicone based, and whatever it is, maybe it's my skin, maybe it's the other products I use, what tends to happen is you'll get a lot of pilling when I put other products on top, especially because I use a lot of hydrating products. I love a good hyaluronic acid, my skin loves hydration. So for me personally, it tends to cause more trouble than it's worth, and I just tend to prefer powdering or just dealing with the fact I might look a little bit more glowy. Eyebrows I'm going to keep pretty natural. I'm just going to get a little spoolie and I'm just going to brush them in the natural direction they are. I do tend to sort of trim them and keep them a sort of less wild sort of shape, I suppose, but just keeping quite natural for this look. This look is very much about, I suppose, being clean. I would say a lot of the clean beauty trend and all of that really does lend some of its inspiration from this era of makeup, as it's really about showcasing your natural beauty and colouring and all of that kind of thing. So now I'm going to line the eyes with a brown eyeliner. Now brown will look a bit softer than black and a bit more sort of natural and soft. So that's why I'm going for that. So when it comes to tight lining, especially if you have an eye shape a bit like mine, it's easier to pull the lid up with one finger and using the other finger to make sure you can go underneath and in between the eyelashes, as it sort of reveals them a bit better. And when you do the tight lining, you can also do the same thing and slightly pull the eyelid down to reveal the waterline to make that easier. So I'm going to do this off camera because I need two hands, but it's that sort of motion. I go in between the eyelashes. And this is quite tricky to do on camera. Also coordinate everything. But hopefully your eyes will be a bit more what's the word? Contemplative is not the word. Put down slightly and just go across. Now I don't have my glasses on, so this might look a bit messy, but the funny thing is I can always just clean it up after. And what I'll also do is I'm going to use the mirror to running out of words. I'm going to use the mirror so I can see if I've missed anything and I'll correct it. Now you can see it makes a bit of difference. It looks like the top needs a bit of help, so I'm going to use the mirror so I can see better to help it, but even with this sort of messy application, you can see a difference. So there's a bit of eyeliner in the eyelid and things like that, but because of the eyeshadow we're using, I'm just going to leave it because it's all going to blend and create this really soft effect anyway. So I'm just going to do the other eye. I'm going to prime the eyelids. So yeah, I'm just going to put this on the back of my hand, and I'm just going to use a brush just to brush it over the eyelid. So now for the eyeshadow, I've got this really orange K-Beauty palette. So I'm going to be using the brown and the orange part of this palette. I'm going to use a denser sort of flat brush like this to pack on pigment, and I'm going to use a fluffier brush later to blend. So I'm going to start off with the brown, and I'm going to place that very close to my eyelid and eyelashes, pretty much for me under the hood of my eyes and slightly above the crease. So I'm just going to pack on the pigment like so. So I'm going to open my eyes so I can see if any of the brown can be seen when I open my eyes, which will be done by placing it slightly above the crease. So I'm going to get a slightly fluffier brush and I'm just going to blend around the border so it looks more like a cohesive, what silhouette is this? Like a curve instead of a more uneven sort of surface. I want it to follow the curve of the eyelid better. So I'm just going to blend that out. And I'm going to get the brush I used for the brown again, which I'm going to use it on the orange. So the brown and the orange already mixed together before we even start putting it on the eyelid. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to place it slightly above the hood and where like the crease line is. So it is placed higher than the brown. And I want it to sort of be about halfway between my eyelid and the eyebrow. I want it to be seen, but I don't want it to be very in your face in the main event. I want everything to look sort of cohesive, as we're going for a sort of natural glam sort of thing. So I'm going to take the orange to where the socket sort of ends. And I'm going to just gently brush the excess underneath the eye. And then I'm just going to repeat on the other side. Going over the socket and just blending with the brown. Going to get our fluffy blending brush again, and I'm just going to wipe off excess and also do some more blending. Focusing on the perimeter here, I want the eyeshadow looking like it sort of blends into the skin. You almost don't know where the skin ends and the eyeshadow starts. I think the orange still stands out a little bit too much. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a bit more brown on the blendy brush, and I'm just going to add a bit more. Now I'm just going to drag the eyeshadow outwards in a straight line. So instead of it being quite snatched upwards, I'm going for a sort of long horizontal sort of look. Then I'm going to get the eyeliner again, and I'm going to place it above the lash line this time. Then I'm going to buff it out with the blendy brush. hopefully you should see a bit more definition. And so I'm just going to get the eyeliner. I'm just going to do the same thing on the other side. So now I'm going to curl the eyelashes. Now I'm going to use a tubing mascara, and that is just because with the tubing mascara I personally get less fallout, and it's just something that seems to last the best with me. The only problem is it's not waterproof, so if you're crying it's not going to end well. But just for a sort of everyday sort of thing, for an everyday thing it's fine, but maybe if you're going to somewhere where you really need the mascara to stay in place, just use a waterproof formula of some sort. A waterproof formula will also fare better with actually keeping the eyelashes staying up and preventing them from going back to their original position after you've curled them. Let's just tidy up the fallout. Just going to use a cotton bud to neaten things up. Just any tiny bits that I can see up close. I need a bit more cleaning up and blending. I have some blush. I'm going to use a purpley type one, and I'm going to use my finger and I'm going to place it just underneath the eye, and then I'm going to drag it upwards like this. So you have a somewhat natural but also somewhat lifted sort of look. I want to avoid blending below my nose and a bit too low down, as it sort of just drags things down, and on me personally it just looks a bit tired and strange looking. I like to also take the blush to the under eye, and that is because I have a lot of olivey, I have an olive skin tone, so a lot of green in it, and green and purple are complementary on the colour wheel, so they really stand out next to each other, make things pop. So it's really obvious if there's just a stripe of blush and then a stripe of just your skin with a greeny undertone. So I like to blend them together so they look more seamless and less like I've just put a purple stripe on my face. Now going to the lips, I'm just going to follow my natural lip shape with a brown lip liner. I'll then slightly overdraw the top just here where it curves, and that's just to visually shorten the distance between my top lip and my philtrum, as I have a bit of a upturned nose, so it sort of balances it out a bit. And I'm going to get a pinky nude. This is your viral, I suppose, Charlotte Tilbury Pillow Talk, but honestly any sort of pinky mauvey colour will do the job. And I'm just going to place it inside the lips. Now, as you can see, the eye makeup is leaning on the orangey side, but the lipsing on the pinky side, and I think it doesn't look the most cohesive. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get an orange lip gloss, and I'm going to bring down the pinkiness a bit of the lip. Of course, you can just apply it directly from the tube. This one is just my own personal lip gloss. But for a bit of fun, let's use a lip brush. Start in the middle and just brush outwards. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to powder my face. Going to use a relatively fluffy brush, and I'm just going to powder the face. I like to use AM brush that's on the smaller side, what you might normally see with a powder brush. That's just because I find it a bit easier to use. But to be honest, you can use whatever powder brush that you like, as long as it works for you. So I've got the Fenty Beauty banana powder, and I'm just going to put a little bit of this over the cheek, and that's because, at least on camera to me, the cheek is looking a little bit too pinky against all of the other makeup, so having something with just a bit of yellow in will just sort of help it look a bit more cohesive with the rest of the colours I've used. I think as well, when you're olive toned, it just seems you don't blush as much. And of course, because red and green complementary colours, very close to each other in terms of being opposites on the colour wheel, it can very easily look unnatural, especially on olive undertone. So I just like to pay more attention to it, and if I need to, using complementary colours to bring down any pinkness or redness, or using a warm colour like a yellow or orange just to sort of blend it in with the makeup at the time, or just the overall foundation. So there, hopefully it's still visible, but it looks a bit more cohesive with the overall makeup.
You move like music, a gentle symphony, graceful steps that hold certain mystery. Bottom, your eyes like diamonds, shining bright, they glow.